I wanted to talk about the movie The Golden Compass, but I couldn't do it in the format of one of my favorite films posts, as I don't rate it that highly. However, I think it gets a bad rap. This will also serve as a dive into the issues I have with studio meddling and my love of auteur cinema. So I figure I'll give a little background on the film, then go over what the film does well, what it doesn't do well, and then address some of the common complaints. The Golden Compass is a film from 2007 based off the His Dark Materials novel series by Philip Pullman. I haven't personally read this series, so I'll mostly avoid comparisons, but it is important to know some of the source material to understand why the film failed. The novel series takes a strong stance against religion, and in particular, the Catholic Church. This meant from the start there would be a strong pushback from those religious groups. So when large groups had stated they would boycott the film, New Line Cinema decided they would try to please them by making the film not directly call out any forms of religion, and just make it about groups with authority. Chris Weitz, the director, had originally been chosen to direct, but when the studio was limiting his creativity, he chose to leave the project. Once the studio's second choice also turned it down, they returned to Weitz and allowed him the freedom to make the film he wanted. After the filming was completed, New Line Cinema replaced Weitz's editor for one of their own to cut out anything that makes comparisons to the Catholic Church, as well as some of the darker moments, such as character deaths. This would just cause more issues, as the religious groups would still not support something based off of a series that supports atheism. And because of the changes, those who were fans of the source material also wouldn't support it. So in New Line Cinema's attempt to make a film for everyone, they actually made it for nobody. So what does the film do well? The Golden Compass has amazing visual effects for 2007, and this was even recognized by the Academy through winning the Oscar for Best Achievement in Visual Effects. The many animals and airships all look great for the most part. One other thing the Academy recognized was the art direction, which I must say the setting is one of the strongest parts. The setting is a steampunk version of the world, with the airships all being lifted by balloons and the technology all working through various gears and cogs. It looks pretty cool. One of my favorite things about the film is the casting. For the main character, Lyra, they had an open casting to young girls across England, and they did a fantastic job of finding a girl who really seemed to embody the character with Dakota Blue Richards. Daniel Craig plays the part of Lord Asriel, and while he doesn't have a lot of screen time, he pulls all the attention whenever he is on screen. I also know he was very passionate about doing this project, saying he would have delayed any Bond films to work on this if he had to. Nicole Kidman plays the villain, Miss Coulter, and does a great job, making the audience want to like her, but knowing they can't trust her. Sam Elliott plays a very Sam Elliott-esque character with Lee Scoresby, the aeronaut, just a perfect casting there. Eva Green also plays the witch, Seraphina. Sadly, we don't get a scene reuniting her with Daniel Craig, though. There's also a lot of great voice acting from the talking animals in the film. Freddie Highmore as Pantalaimon, Kathy Bates as Hester, Ian McShane as Ragnar, and best of all, Ian McKellen as Yorick Burnison. One other thing the film does well is there's a bear fight. The other fights are a little lackluster, but how cool is a bear fight? Now, what does the film do poorly? While I like the film, there are some complaints I agree with. Firstly, the start of the film has way too much exposition. I think a lot of information is told that could easily have been shown. The film is also edited a little weird, jumping around a little too quickly. These two things together make the film have weird pacing issues, being slow and exposition heavy at the start before rapidly rushing through the rest of the film. This is probably in part due to the scenes that were removed. Obviously, I would have liked to see Weitz's original vision for the film, as well as a stronger stance with a little more backbone than the milquetoast version we got. Lastly, the ending of the film isn't great. The ending would have had another scene with Daniel Craig's character, and the actual setup for the next film in the series. This final scene was cut due to being too dark for what New Line wanted. Weirdly, however, this scene does appear in the video game adaptation. Maybe if they had been given the opportunity to continue the series, this would have been included. Now to address some of the major complaints I don't agree with. While I agree this film doesn't take a strong enough stance, it's not like it doesn't at all. So at least it does make a stance against authority figures. Another major complaint is that the plot is too tough to follow, and while I don't like the way they explain things at the beginning, they do tell the audience what they need to know. So I think this is more a matter of people choosing not to follow it. Another complaint I've seen is that Dakota Blue Richards' delivery isn't great, but I honestly fail to see that. She's a child who I think does far better than most child actors. I don't really have a way to defend it other than just saying she's no Jake Lloyd. In conclusion, I can't really even recommend this film. It's still only like a C or C plus in my eyes. I do think it is an interesting look at how studio interference affects a film. It was once my go-to film for talking about that, but there's been an increasing number of films that fall under that same category, with Justice League and some of the stuff Disney has been making. I will say though, if you're interested in watching this story, HBO recently started a television adaptation of the novel called His Dark Materials. And while I don't think they do as good of a job with the setting, the casting is nearly as good with some different strengths, and with the added time, the plot is told much better. This film may have been seen as a failure and been forgotten to time, but I will always have a soft spot for it. I hope this might change how some people view this film. This post is kind of meant as a trial run for me to attempt at defending some films that don't get a fair shake. So look for me to do this and perhaps even combine it with a favorite film of mine in the future. Thanks for watching.